Hello, friends. Welcome to Dream to Done, the podcast for moms who are ready to discover their dreams and goals again and actually do them. If you've been feeling a little lost in motherhood, I'm here to get you off the back burner and start taking a turn for yourself. I'm your host, Jessica Erickson, a certified life coach and your accountability cheerleader. Each week, you'll hear tips and tricks on doing life with a few kids, interviews with inspiring guests, and real talk on momming. I want you to discover your dreams, even in the messy middle of motherhood, because you deserve happiness too. You will also see that a mom achieving her goals and dreams lifts those around her. You deserve to take a turn in your life without feeling guilty. I am always cheering for you. Here we go. Hi, I'm Jessica Erickson, and welcome to episode 5 of the Dream to Done podcast. Today, I wanted to tell you a story, and it's a story about my mother-in-law. She is a wonderful, wonderful woman, and I love her. So if you're listening, love you, Robin. She told me this story, and it is just so hits the point home here that I wanted to share it with you today. So she lived in a house for over 20 years, and she hated the range over the oven. She just didn't like it ever. When she first moved in, she didn't like it. And she didn't like it the whole time they lived there. And it wasn't something that consumed her every waking minute. It wasn't something that was like always on her mind. But every now and again, she would walk into the kitchen and think, I really don't like that oven range hood. And she didn't like it the whole time they lived there. So why didn't she change it? Well, here are some of the things that she thought. She thought, oh, it's going to be so much money to change it. So much money. She came in one time and said, oh, I wish I could change that, but I don't have the expertise to change that because I'm not an electrician or a general contractor. I don't know how to do that. I don't have the education to change that. So another time she thought, oh, I wish I could change that, but I don't have time. I've got all these kids and they're all running around and I don't have time to change that. So no time, no money, no knowledge or expertise. So there it sat and sat for over 20 years. So fast forward to the time when they have decided that they're going to move and it's time to sell the house. Well, her realtor came in and said, I hate to break it to you, but that oven range hood, it's really outdated. And she said, yeah, I know. Wish we could change it, but we can't. It's too expensive. And she said, oh, actually, you can just run down to the local like Home Depot, hardware store, Lowe's, whatever. They're like $100. And she was like, I'm sorry, what? They're like $100? That's nothing. I thought it was going to be thousands. And she said, well, I still can't change it because I don't have the expertise to change it. And she said, oh, it's so easy. The realtor tells her, it's so easy. I bet one of your kids could do it. You could totally do it. You've got it. So my mother-in-law goes to the hardware store, finds one she really likes for around $100, and within an hour had it changed and done. And she sat there looking at it and she was like, why did I look at that ugly oven range hood for over 20 years when it would have cost me about $100 and an hour of my time, and I could have had this beautiful thing? And so just such a great story, because sometimes there are things like that in our lives that we want to do, but we think it's going to be so expensive. We think I don't have the time. We think I don't have the expertise. And all of those things are what we in the coaching world call limiting beliefs. There's something that you're thinking. It's not a fact. So in coaching, we like to separate thoughts and facts. A thought is something that you're thinking about a fact. I'm going to give you some examples. So the fact is it's 105 degrees outside. My thought about that is, oh, it's going to be so hot and I don't want to go outside. So the fact is what we could prove in a court of law, and our thought is something that we think about that fact. So another example would be the amount of money in your bank account. So there is a number. That's a fact. What you think about that is, oh, that's a lot of money, or, oh, we're really low on money right now. The number on the scale, you get on the scale and it's a number. That's a fact. The force of gravity weighing on you is this amount of weight. Now, your thought about that could be good or bad. So the one way that you can tell if it's a thought is if there's any person in the world could think about it differently. The weight on the scale is a great example. Somebody might get on the scale and see 200 and think, that's amazing. I've lost 100 pounds. This is fantastic. Somebody else might get on the scale and see 200 and think, oh, I've gained 50 pounds. This is terrible. So the same number, the same fact, but depending on who you are, it could mean different things to you. You could think different things about it. So my challenge to you is to separate your thoughts and facts about your goals and try to sort out if you have any limiting beliefs. If you've ever said, I could never go on that vacation. If you've ever said, oh, I could never write a book. I could never own a business. I could never put my kid in daycare. I could never XYZ. What is it that your brain is telling you you could never do, but you've never actually investigated to see if you could? I think about this like a lot with like Olympic athletes. How did they know they were going to be so good at this sport? Sometimes it has to do with what their parents did or the amount of access to training that they had. Sometimes it's their body type, but I guarantee you that a lot of it is that they thought they could. They thought that they could. They had to have that belief within them. Because if you don't think you could be an Olympic athlete, there's no way you're going to start training for it, right? Okay. So in the business world, when they are trying to get something done, good business practice is to get 3 quotes. So you're going to get 3 quotes to see if you can get a project done. Okay. I hope that maybe you're doing that same thing in your life. If you're saying something like, oh, I could never have house cleaners. Well, how do you know? Have you checked it out? Have you gotten 3 quotes from 3 different people? Have you investigated it at all? If you're like, oh, I could never write a book. Well, have you written a chapter? Have you tried? Maybe you could. Maybe you are the next best author and we just got to get you on a computer and start typing. Maybe you've got some great ideas for a business, but you're just like, oh, I could never do that. And you don't even know how to get a business license. What's step 1? So I want to challenge you to write out what you're thinking about your goals. If you have a goal, I could never lose the weight and be healthy. Okay, well, why not? How could you do it? Investigate. What are some ways that it could work? Challenge all of those thoughts, all of those limiting beliefs. We can challenge them. And your brain, when you think a thought repeatedly, creates a neural pathway in your brain. So at first, it might just be a little trail in your brain. But if you think it a lot, repeatedly, for years, it turns into a road, and then it turns into a major highway. When it turns into a major highway, that's no longer a thought, it's a belief, like a deep held belief. So those can be challenged too. So I don't know where it was. Maybe when I was in kindergarten, some kid said, oh, you're not very good at drawing butterflies. And somehow that got into like, I'm not a very good artist. And so then I didn't pursue art in middle school and high school. I just always thought, oh, I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist. That's the thought. It had turned into a belief that I'm not an artist. Well, guess what? I can be an artist. And I bet then if I started taking classes and like tried, who knows, maybe I'd be an amazing artist. You just don't know. So think like, where did this come from? Okay, back to the 3 quotes thing. I wanted to talk about why sometimes we don't get 3 quotes. This has been interesting to me. So I have run a business and I was a newborn photographer. So when I had babies, this is like surgery. You don't want to do your own. I know some photographers do their own, but my first, I had a really hard labor and it was very difficult for me to do anything the first couple weeks after I had her. So I just was like, we are going to give a gift to ourselves and hire other people to do our newborn photography for for me. And that way also I got to be in the pictures, which was awesome. So I was trying as a newborn photographer, I was hiring a newborn photographer. And so I did what I preached. I got 3 quotes and I decided and I chose, and one of the people I did not choose called me back. And she was actually pretty aggressive. And she was like, "I thought we connected on the phone." And I said, "We did. I had a great connection with you." She said, "I thought I did everything right." And I said, "You did. It was great. You did everything right." She said, "Then why didn't you pick me? Why didn't you book with me?" And I was like, "Oh, wow, very aggressive. But B, the reason I didn't pick you was because you weren't offering the product that I wanted. If I had wanted your very simplistic newborn photography, I would have picked you. But I picked somebody else who was a little more prop heavy and was willing to let me bring a dress and a hat and include all my kids and customize it a little bit more." And so she was very upset that I had not chosen her and made it known. And I think sometimes we're afraid that that's going to happen. We're afraid that if I get 3 quotes from 3 different people, that means I have to tell 2 people no. And the fact is, you cannot control other people's thoughts, feelings, or actions. So I could not control that she was upset that I didn't choose her. I cannot control that she wanted to call me back and talk about it. What I could control was how much information I gave her and if I continued to talk to her on the phone. Okay. So I think sometimes we're avoiding confrontation. And in the effort to protect ourselves and avoid confrontation, we just decide, I'm not going to get any information, or I'm going to go with the first person that I talk to, or none at all. So if we can separate out thoughts and facts, realize that we can't control other people's thoughts, feelings, or actions, and try to take some of the emotion out of it, which when you can separate your thoughts from the facts, you can take some emotion out of it. It becomes easier to gather information and say yes or no and decide what you want to do. Another example of this, we're thinking about getting some fake grass installed. And I kind of thought it would be a certain amount of money. And I was like, well, let's get some quotes. So the first person that I talked to, it was like 4 times the amount that I was thinking. And I was like, whoa, that's high. And then I got 2 more quotes and they were all right around the same amount. So I was like, well, that's not on our budget right now. We're not going to do that right now. But maybe later, we'll see. And like, but I got the information. So if you're constantly just like, oh, maybe it would be good to get fake grass, but we could never afford it. Or maybe we should get fake grass, but I don't have the time to get the quotes. I don't. So whatever your limiting beliefs are, I want you to challenge them. And I want you to separate out your thoughts and facts. Figure out what really is true and figure out what you're thinking about it. If you have some limiting beliefs, challenge those. And if you need some help with that, it's great to get a coach. So with my mother-in-law's example, it was her realtor that was her coach that told her, no, you can totally afford it. You can totally do this. You've got this. So if you need someone in your court, a life coach or a friend could be a great help. They're able to help you see your blind spots and see where you might have some limiting beliefs. I love this. I love having coach friends. I was talking to a coach friend a few weeks ago, and she was telling me some plans for her business. And then she said, okay, am I limiting my beliefs anywhere? Do you see anywhere that I'm like have a blind spot that I'm not seeing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. That we're like, hey, check me here. Do I have this right? Am I like on the right track? So if you need someone in your court to help you figure out where your blind spots are, or if you have some limiting beliefs, I would love to be that for you. So send me a DM. Let's talk. Let's get this going. If you have a goal or a dream and you want to get there, I want you to get there. And I don't want a thought to stand in your way. So don't let something stand in your way that's just in your brain, that's just a thought. Overcome that, up-level that, and let's get some stuff done. All right. I hope you have a great week and we will see you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Dream to Done. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much if you would leave a rating and review. It helps more moms like you find the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. I'll see you in next week's episode. I'm always cheering for you. See you next week.